Hi everyone, I'm Mary and welcome to Bitesize, where I take a look at different pieces of media and I just kind of give you my thoughts and opinions on them. Giving this a go and, well, I got nothing better to do. So the first movie that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about a movie called Hook from 1991. Well, actually it's one that's not particularly new. In fact, a lot of people actually really like this movie from what I can tell. It stars Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman. Basically it's about Peter Pan. He's all grown up, he forgot about Neverland, and now he's basically a mean old adult and doesn't remember what it's like to be a kid. Which, not gonna lie, kind of hits home because I just turned 25, so I'm kind of going through what you might call my quarter life crisis. Alright, so first let's talk about the pros. Obviously, Robin Williams is fantastic as per usual, very funny. Once he's actually started getting into that Peter Pan mindset, does a fantastic job. He actually does a very, very good job in the beginning too, really. They kind of show him as being very, you know, cowardly in a sense. He doesn't like heights, he doesn't like flying. Obviously, he's basically the complete opposite of what he was as a child. There's a scene where basically his kids get kidnapped by Hook. That's how he returns to Neverland. And before he remembers that he's Peter Pan because he's lost his memory of Neverland. When he's there, Captain Hook tells him, hey, if you can climb up there and you know, just touch your kid's fingers and I'll let him go. And he doesn't remember how to fly or anything, so he just climbs the mast and tries, but he kind of gives up really easily. And it's honestly something I wasn't quite expecting. I was expecting him to actually like try a little bit harder than he did. But it's also very sad, and Robin Williams does a very good job of portraying that, I feel like. Obviously, in the real world, he's playing the usual, you know, I'm the dad that works too much, and I don't spend as much time with my children as I should. Which is perfectly fine. I think almost every dad in the 90s movies was like that, so, you know, it is what it is. But I kind of liked that they showed how quick he was to give up on that, because I feel like that's probably the highest stakes I've ever seen for a dad in one of these movies. For him to give up so quickly, it was actually a little surprising, but I also really liked kind of how dark that really was. When it comes to a matter of life or death, or you know, somebody kidnapping your children, basically, you kind of expect that the parents are gonna go all the way. They'll go as far as they can. And here they show that he doesn't really, and that's not something you see a whole lot of, actually, and I kind of like that. So another pro is Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook, which they did a really good job on the makeup for him, by the way, because I was watching this with my mom and neither of us even really fully realized it was Dustin Hoffman. Honestly, I think the only way that we would have known is because I happened to see that he was in the movie, so I'm like, well, where is he? I haven't seen him yet. This must be him. And once I had that idea, then I was kind of like, oh yeah, this is him, but oh man, we would have never guessed it to begin with. So he did a really fantastic job, though. He's hamming it up completely. This is only my first time seeing this movie. A lot of people have seen this when they were kids and everything. They grew up with it, and so they're very fond of this movie. So apologies, but I don't have the nostalgia goggles for it. There's a scene where, as Captain Hook, he's basically saying, like, I'm just gonna flat out kill myself. And I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? There's a little bit of that mood whiplash, I guess you would call it. So that was a little strange. You would think that this would be, you know, another Robin Williams movie where it's Robin Williams, so, you know, no one else is really gonna match up to him. Dustin Hoffman actually steals the show in this movie. So another pro is the premise. Obviously, we've all seen Peter Pan in some form or another, probably, most likely through the actual animated Disney movie, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of on. It's it's one of those older movies, so the pacing and everything's a little strange, at least compared to the more modern Disney movies. And I'm not gonna lie, for me personally, it's just a little bit boring. I know that's probably weird. A lot of people probably disagree with that, but that's how I feel on the matter. So, Peter Pan in general is not necessarily my cup of tea. However, the premise here is that, you know, surprise, surprise, the boy who doesn't want to grow up actually does grow up. It's about the inevitability of aging and growing and changing, and I feel like that's a very interesting take on the story. And I think every kid kind of doesn't really want to grow up. I mean, I know that as kids we all say, oh, I can't wait until I get older and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. But I think at the heart, I think a lot of us don't really ever want to grow up. So the boy who's never going to grow up actually grow up. It's a little bit depressing, really. Because it's kind of like saying, well, you thought you were never going to grow up and you always said you were never going to grow up. Guess what? You have to. There's no stopping it. And it does say that at the beginning, and honestly, yeah, that is kind of how it feels. Like I said, just turned 25, so I'm kind of going through a little bit of that. It's less about you have to either grow up or you have to stay a child forever. It's less about that. At the end, it's about finding a nice balance between the two. You have to, you know, stay a child at heart, but you can't forget your responsibilities as an adult. And I think it's handled very well. One last pro for this movie. Dante Bosco's in it. He plays Rufio, and a couple things here. First of all, it's really cool to actually see Zuko before he was Zuko. So that's honestly kind of interesting. And secondly, I've heard of this character, Rufio. I've had no context whatsoever, because I've never seen the movie. I've had no context whatsoever of his character. I mean, how I've heard of him, there were probably context clues, but honestly, who even understands what the hell Homestuck was? And if you do, more power to you. And yes, I do know what Homestuck is. No, I'm not necessarily proud of that. So it's interesting to kind of actually finally see a character that I've heard about a lot and actually understand what character he is. Obviously his style is really freaking cool, so there's that too. Alright, and now we move on to the cons of the movie. And again, I know this is a very nostalgic movie for a lot of people. I don't have those nostalgia goggles. I mean, I kind of do because it's Robin Williams, and I mean, I miss Robin Williams. I think pretty much everybody does. So, in a sense, there is a little bit of nostalgia there, but not for the movie itself. So take my opinions with a grain of salt, because they are coming from someone who's never grown up with this movie. The biggest con for this movie for me is that it's very long. It's surprisingly long. When my mom and I watched it, we started at like 7 o'clock at night, a little bit after, so maybe like 7:15. And I had to be to bed by 10 for work the next day, and this movie almost went until 10, I feel like. I know it was like 9:30 or so by the time that it was actually over. And so, A, it was a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, and 2, B, the parts that were a little too long, you can kind of tell are the parts that are a little too long. You have the food fight sequence, the chasing sequence, the other chasing sequence. So basically it's all the really loud and maybe a little bit more obnoxious scenes are the ones that go on for a very long time, and if you're already kind of tired, it's maybe not the best movie to put on because you kind of just want to keep turning the volume down until it's like at 2%. There are some good scenes. There are some really good scenes, but the ones that are not super great are the ones that seem to go on for much longer than they should. And can't help it. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know, but it was a little too much for me. The other major con that I have with this movie is I feel like if I was a young, rambunctious, like 10-year-old boy, I would probably love this movie a lot more than I do. It's one of those movies where I think it's a bit more of a boys' movie, which kind of makes sense. I mean, Peter Pan is probably more of a boys' story, really, and I hate to like put the whole gender role sort of thing on there, but that's kind of how it's, you know, always come across, really, because it's always about, you know, the boy who doesn't want to grow up, the lost boys. Wendy has to, you know, act as the caretaker to the boys when she gets to Neverland, and this and that. And it's not like she even has sisters, it's her and her brothers. You have a very small group of girls in the story. You know, you have Wendy, you have Tiger Lily, which I will give this movie credit. They don't really mess with the whole racial aspect, which is kind of a relief, because, you know, I didn't really want to have to go into that. You have Wendy, whose basic role is love interest slash slight mother figure, which is a little, come to think of it, that's actually a really strange dynamic in the original story, isn't it? And you have Tiger Lily, like I said, which is a whole racial mess that I don't feel qualified to talk about. And you also have Tinkerbell, and you have the mermaids, and they all like Peter Pan. Just basically have a little bit of jealousy amongst all the girls in the story, and that kind of sort of makes an appearance here. In this movie, Wendy has grown up. She's really old. She's really only in the first part of the movie, and just a little bit at the end. Not by much, but just a little bit. You have Peter Pan's wife, who again is kind of in the same spot. She's in the movie at the beginning for a little bit, and then she's just got a little part at the end. And then you have his daughter, who she doesn't really get a whole lot to do. Aside from say Captain Hook's a bad man, which yep, he sure is. The son gets a lot more to do. He has more of an arc because he has the whole, my dad didn't come to my baseball game and he's never there for me and blah blah blah. You know, they have that same sort of thing. So he gets like an actual character development. And then you have Tinkerbell in this movie, and Tinkerbell is Julia Roberts, and nothing against Julia Roberts. I'm trying to think if I've ever actually seen her in anything where she's really stood out to me. Maybe that's because I haven't really seen any of her big movies yet. Part of the point of this this series is because I have a whole lot of movies that I want to watch, but I don't want to just watch them. I want to do something with that. So I kind of want to, you know, actually go over my thoughts on stuff. And so Julia Roberts plays Tinkerbell in this movie, and she's fine. Really the only character trait she has really is that she has a crush on Peter Pan. I feel like I'm supposed to gravitate towards her a little bit, and I don't. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the nostalgia goggles. Maybe it's the fact that the focus of this movie is a lot more on Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. I mean, she is in it. She does, you know, move the plot forward, but her main, like, character development if you really can call it that, honestly just comes down to, hey, I'm in love with you, Peter Pan. You know, don't you think you want to maybe stay and be with me instead? And that's kind of basically what it boils down to. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else that she really does after that. She's there when he wakes up, when he gets back home. She you know, helps the kids fly back home. But there's not really a lot of focus on her and her character, because her character is basically be in love with Peter Pan and, you know, try and help him and move the plot forward. There's not really a whole lot there for just her. That's how I feel. And so between this being more of a movie for that's kind of aimed more at boys, as the food fight scene, particularly the name calling, comes to mind, because that's not really something that works for me, because I'm not target audience for that. Between that and between not having nostalgia goggles for this movie, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of only give it like a 6 or maybe a 7 out of 10. I mean, I would probably watch it again at some point, but it's not something that I'm eager to watch a second time through. It just isn't for me. Alright, thank you everybody so much for watching. If you like this video, you want to see more, you can go ahead and, you know, click the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, do all that stuff that they ask you to do on the YouTube. And today's song suggestion is gonna be Fly by Hilary Duff, because why not? Alright everyone, see you next time.